Iron Man 2. Tony Stark, I am Iron Man, is dying. And he basically spends the rest of the movie acting as a jerk, going around, driving his really fast cars, basically putting himself in all sorts of dangers. And I think I pretty much summed up the movie.
Well, yeah, there's also that thing with Whiplash that shows up.
Well, he's never named Whiplash, though. Cleverly or not, I guess for the comic book geek, they actually get to conflate two Iron Man heroes.
Villains.
The Crimson Dynamo, whose last name is actually... That's his name in the movie, but he never gets called Whiplash.
Oh.
Nor is he Crimson Dynamo. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, Crimson Dynamo, his name is actually Dimitri.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I think you're right.
Okay, so he's like the Crimson Whiplash. He's
Pretty
the
much.
Crimson Lash.
Yeah.
okay.
There you go.
With
whip
his
dynamo.
long whips. Basically trying to hold together a story that's, neither tethered nor controlled. Iron Man, I think, set up the expectation for Iron Man 2 quite high. It really broke through the comic book movie franchise to a broader audience. It was bright. It was, it was carried on the back of Robert Downey Jr.'s personality, and you wanted more of that personality. And you watch this movie, and you don't get him. Half the scenes you get everyone but him. It's everything acting around. And it's just like really clunky plot lines, and
I didn't get that.
Neither did I.
I had a sense of, I'm gonna come out outright and say it. Like maybe it's because I went into this movie having such low expectations. In a sense, I saw the previews. I don't like Mickey
Did you
Rourke.
just say such...
Low expectations.
Oh, I heard
Yes.
sexual expectations.
Talk about Whiplash. Go on.
Yes. I had a problem with Mickey Rourke. I thought it was going to be a complete mess because he was going to ruin the entire movie. And it turns out he didn't, but really for a long time in the comics, it was the whole point of the Iron Man suit wasn't just like means for him to act as a superhero, it was a means for him to stay alive. And I really did like this notion of Tony Stark essentially knowing he's dying and doing things and trying to do things in order to make sure this company goes on and the people that he loves go on. The scenes between Robert Downey Jr. and Gwyneth Paltrow were really interesting, I thought.
in the first movie or the second?
The second.
I agree with you, and I like those scenes, and I kind of like the way they interpreted how Tony Stark would react to dying. I don't agree that he behaves like a jerk. I think he behaves like a man who's very desperate to fit in as much life as humanly possible in a very limited amount of time. And I thought that was kind of charming that, a lot of times when you have the heroes knowing that they're dying, they're worried about their legacy and trying to, I gotta correct this and that. And he's just trying to shove as much stuff as possible because he just loves life that much.
Absolutely.
And I love that. I thought that was super charming. And it's just too bad we didn't get more of it, in my opinion. I thought that was too bad.
He wasn't necessarily whining about his faith in a sense. He was he's a complete type A personality, going through the motions, setting up like Pepper Potts as leader of his company, and it's almost like you would get a sense that somebody else would be like freaking out and going, "Oh my God, I can't believe I'm..." No, he's thinking like 3 steps ahead, and he's like, that's fine. I'll start driving in Monaco and maybe kill myself, but if I do, who cares? But in the meantime, I'm having a blast, I'm having a great time, and I'm going to make sure that the people I care about are going to be there and are going to be taken care of after I'm gone, even if in the case of Pepper Potts is essentially
So wait a
keeping
minute.
a whole bunch of problems on
You
her
didn't have a
lap.
problem with the whole scene of him being drunk and
acting.
and then the sock and rock'em robots there fighting each other?
A tad silly, to be sure, but in the context of an action summer blockbuster, he's unstable. It's getting to him. It's really starting to sink in. And at the same time, though, he sets up this whole confrontation really to give the suit to his buddy. So
Well, he doesn't give the suit. The buddy just kind of flies away with it. But
Yeah, exactly.
No, I agree with Frank's
He-
interpretation
he
of it.
Lets him. He lets him. He goads him into grabbing the
Yeah.
suit and then taking off with it because he's not going to
Really?
fork it over to the U.S. government. But at the same time, again, he's thinking legacy and he's thinking, I'm not always going to be there.
He's providing a context where he can give it to Rhodey while bypassing the U.S. government and saving face for everyone. That's what he's doing.
really, I didn't read it that
Yeah.
way.
I definitely had the sense. I had the sense. He was setting up this entire fight to essentially look. I'm not going to give the suit over, but really, you're my buddy. You can fly the suit, and I'm not going to be there.
Because the dialogue also points it out after the fact, where they go like, didn't I kind of get it easily? Like, wouldn't he have fail-safes? And like they make a point of pointing it out to show you like something's afoot.
By the way, I didn't like the film, but I did like Sam Rockwell.
See, I hated Sam Rockwell.
I really liked him. I thought he was funny.
I thought he was going to suck, but he grew on me. The problem is that, Tony Stark's gallery of villains is essentially very limited. They're like all industrialists or crazy mad scientists like he is who build armors. I mean, but Sam Rockwell was, to a certain extent, almost indistinguishable from Obadiah Stane. Like, I mean, okay, Obadiah might have been a little older and Tony Stark's mentor, but really, okay, here's another rich guy in a suit.
He was also bald with a beard and a white suit.
He was a rich guy with a lot of money who wants to compete with Tony Stark and build a super armor that's going to put Tony Stark out of business and make him the next ruler of the world or whatever. Like, I mean, not in the James Bond context, but in a I get to fund the U.S. government.
Super industrialist.
Oh yeah, and he played the wannabe aspect of it really well. Like, you always got the impression of Tony Stark light. You know what I mean?
Oh,
like,
for
sure. That was one difference
in the Tony Stark role, but he didn't get the spot. So it was kind of interesting that now he's playing this role, which is exactly that. It's just like kind of a Tony Stark fan club character.
Yeah.
It's just like. And that
so the wannabe guy who's almost but not quite as good.
He's smart, but he's like smarter than most of us in the room, but not as smart as Tony. No one is, it's just like, and he just wants to be noticed by Tony, and he tries to develop this relationship with Tony, at that bar scene, which I thought was great.
It was,
and it's just like completely brush off, I like Sam Rockwell. He's got a thing, and it's going to be Sam Rockwell when he comes in, but it's
that actor, mark my words, will go to the moon.
And see, I disliked him a lot because it felt very two-dimensional. I got the wannabe aspect, but I got nothing else. It felt like a caricature instead of a full character.
That's the thing. He was funny two-dimensional.
He was funny, but he wasn't compelling.
Okay. Don Cheadle was a two-dimensional character. Like, everyone's two-dimensional except for the Tony Stark character.
I agree, but like
it's kind of the problem.
Pepper Potts.
Even Pepper Potts in this one, she's got more agency than she does in the first one, where she's just screaming and running around. I loved the relationship when they talked in the first one, but in this one, even though she's doing more, I find she's almost less powerful as a woman. They're quick, witty repartee back and forth. Like she seems to go into more of this naggy role, and he's always pacifying her because she's the emotional woman. Like it becomes he's dealing with her, whereas in the first one, she's the one kind of often dealing with him. And
but he's dying, right? So in a sense, he's really preparing her for
I'm saying I liked her as an actor. I like her as a character, but in this one, I didn't like her character. Even though, if you look at it on the page, she's doing more than in the
She is.
I think it's because you like Scarlett Johansson better.
Maybe that's it. It's maybe the fact that Scarlett Johansson just completely overshadows an actual actress.
Mea culpa. She wasn't as bad as I thought she was going to be.
Because she hardly talked.
Now, you know what? Like, I'm sure I said this in an earlier podcast. I thought it was going to be a train wreck, and she was going to bring down the movie.
She was a train wreck. She's just hot.
No, I again, I'm going to side with Frank on this. I thought she was competent. I don't think she brought anything more to the role that wasn't already on the page, but she didn't distract me from what the story was going to be. And I think it helped that the Black Widow as a character in the movie is really kind of just like the super spy robot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. She's any agent. She's just their best agent. She's put in this role because she fits the,
And to get back to Gwyneth Paltrow just for a sec, I actually didn't get that feeling at all. I thought we got the picture of somebody who had grown accustomed to a very motherly role towards Tony and was feeling that was something wrong. And sort of like any mother who feels that there's something wrong with their child and the child just won't say it, she's sort of getting increasingly panicky. And I thought that worked. I thought that was...
So by the end, he wants to sleep with his mother?
Well, that's how it always goes, isn't it?
So, love the Captain America nod.
I don't know about that.
Dude.
It's an ugly shield, too. It looked plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
That was a bad Easter egg.
Didn't even throw it.
Well, it's a running joke from the first one, because the shield was in the first one as well, in the background when he was working. So.
Yeah.
So, how about the nod to Thor?
Well, this is actually interesting that you bring it up, because we're going to devote the next 2 hours of the podcast on that particular point. Now, I'm joking. The thing is, the Iron Man franchise is really taking off, and they've got Robert Downey Jr., which will essentially guarantee success. I mean, in this particular role, so Iron Man really is the perfect vehicle to sort of unite all those storylines. They've done the Hulk, they've done a post credits scene, but right now they're not going to be doing more Hulk movies.
Oh, it's a pre-credit scene, by the way, for Hulk.
In terms of franchise, I agree. You know what I mean? I think Iron Man's really their least
They're the
alienating.
flagship.
It's their least alienating of heroes. You know, like, and it's because it's a regular person. He's got a job, and by his own wits and wherewithal, he develops this tool, and he gets himself into situations. Now,
Well, I'd say the Playboy
Everything
aspect helps.
what's that?
The Playboy aspect, the rich
Well,
guy,
yeah, you know what I
Playboy,
mean.
the
He's
idle
certainly
life. Awesome.
he's the sparkling wit that we want to be in this time of recession for sure. You know. But this one, I don't know. It didn't have the sparkle that you kind of wanted. And granted, it's a sequel, but I think the problem with it is that they really tried to load it with too much weight for forward-telling story. Like, it should have just been a lighter summer movie. He's almost going to die, or whatever. Just like Dark Knight. You know what I mean? It was like a fairly dark movie, and it's just like Iron Man's not necessarily a dark franchise. The way they launched it, like, it's AC/DC, it's this, it's bright. You know what I mean? Like, this one could have just been a straight-on action movie, closer to something like National Treasure, I'm sorry to say. And people probably would have loved it.
You are out of your freaking mind to bring that movie up.
And maybe what he could have found is all the rings of
Mandarin.
the Mandarin.
Oh,
Actually, I actually would like to see the Mandarin to see how they could update it in a way that's not,
I think
egregiously
I read that he's supposed to be
racist.
the next one. He's supposed to be the next villain.
Yeah, that's great.
Whatever, if that's going to happen 3 years down the line.
Because he could totally be like a triad, the mob boss or something like that. It would be great.
Isn't he already?
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is sort of like have that kind of John Woo triad look instead of, wearing a robe and looking like he's 3 centuries old.
Okay.
But the premise of this one, you mentioned earlier before we started recording, this idea of legacy. Walt Disney gives birth to Tony Stark, and here we are.
I like that though. I really
And-
love the Walt Disney feel of the.
And Tesla gives birth to Whiplash.
It's a great sentence, I should say.
And I don't know. Like, it tries to, what I mean? You've got this whole, like, we're trying to right our parents' wrongs, you know what I mean? Like, and there was always a shield, and your father was part of the Manhattan Project, and this and that. It's just like, it takes away from what Tony Stark is.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's the sort of story that does not belong in an Iron Man franchise, be it movie, TV show, comics, anything. Iron Man is not a legacy hero. Every DC Comics hero is a legacy hero, not Iron Man. You know what I mean?
Though. Like, I like the fact that his father was a big time contractor and he was a super genius, and you have this sense of like the son. I mean, it's a timeless story, right? The son trying to like move out of his father's shadow to a certain extent.
It's a timeless story, but it's not Iron Man's story. The Tony Stark they established in the first movie was a guy who rebuilt his own heart. He's a guy who rebuilt his entire personality and just went like,
quintessential self-made man.
Yeah.
But
And
like no
why
matter
is
how
the
far
Tin
you
Man?
go, there's always how did he come to be the way he is, right?
But then he's not a self-man-made anymore. Now he's a product of his father, and it bugs me because that's not what Iron Man is supposed to celebrate.
It's what the character was originally meant to be, though.
No,
Like, I
it's
mean,
not.
Well, in the comics,
No, it's not.
yeah, he was born into money.
He was born into money, but he
he
remade himself after he went to Vietnam. And his father never really showed up again. I mean, unless you count that horrible Ultimate series where he's a
God,
brain and he's
the
blue,
By
but
Orson Scott Card.
yeah.
The Ultimates don't count. I didn't necessarily mind it all that much because it made him more human in a sense. Like, I mean,
How is making yourself your own man less human?
I'm not saying it's less. All I'm saying is that to a certain extent, it doesn't matter how much of a genius he is. At the end of the day, he has that moment in the movie.
The thing is, you're watching this, and you know what? It just like as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh, this genius father who is so much more involved in like the beginning of Shield and this and that. He is going to be the reason that there's a Captain America.
I don't necessarily mind that. It's just what I'm thinking. It's a really big risk that Marvel is doing with setting up everything for the Avenger movies. People might get tired of these superhero films. And
moreover,
yeah.
especially if those superhero films in questions don't actually tell a full story, they just tell half a story and then a trailer to the next one.
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. I think it's not going to live up to the expectation, and people are going to be
I don't
disappointed.
find that it was half a story. Like, I mean, it wasn't much of a story, I will say that, but I think it's fairly self-contained. I mean,
Well,
I was actually surprised because, like, you know, with Sam Rockwell being in, it threw in an added complication, which I thought they were going to focus on the Whiplash / Crimson Dynamo. Or...
Well, I'm glad Sam Rockwell didn't put on a suit and start being part of the evil bad guy thing. You know what I mean? Like, he was played well, and he was kind of like second string, like, you know, foil.
Yeah,
You know
but
what I mean?
Jeff Bridges did it in the last film.
Exactly. They knew that was a bad idea.
actually, that was fine and fitting for that movie.
Yeah, but it was, you know, that battle scene was like the weakest, you know.
True, but actually, talking about the fight scenes, some of the action set pieces are really cool. I like the one during the race.
Yeah, that was a good one.
It was a good first 30 minutes to the movie.
It was
like, you know,
really
you're
funny.
into it, and
Yeah.
It was like, wow, this is cool.
But the thing is, Jon Favreau still doesn't know how to escalate an action film. It's like an action film is sort of like a joke. You escalate towards the punchline. The punchline is your biggest, most exciting set piece ever. The one that's going to make your jaw drop, make you go like, oh my god, bullet time, you know? And he completely screwed the pooch in terms of spacing, because near the end, what happens is that he fights a gazillion robots in actually quite a creative set piece, because there's this nice bit where Rhodey is sort of stuck following him and giving him like some insight on how close he is to catching
that
up.
was a nice conceit. I like
That was super cool. And it's like, oh, that got cooler, and then more robots, and that got cooler, and that cooler, and then the big bad guy finally shows up, and you're like, all right, this is it. And then no, you know, it's like
I have to say that, like, all the major bad guys in Iron Man movies fall pretty damn fast.
No, it's not the notion of the bad guy, it's just the way the action was staged. It's sort of like getting drunk and hooking up with a girl and then sobering up just before she gets naked, you know?
Oh, she doesn't look that nice anymore. I just keep my head down and don't. Power through.
See, that was Eric. That was not me. I did not say that.
I'm a lover.
Okay.
The Crimson Dynamo.
You just
This is why people tune in.
look, I started it, so I'm not gonna start criticizing anyone. But
That's right. You open those legs.
Repulsor beam.
no, I think you were right, Chris, when you pointed out that it feels like the vision was compromised. It certainly feels that way. Because I feel there are two movies in this one competing for attention. And one of them is the Iron Man movie about Tony Stark dying and dealing with it and showing how a man like Tony Stark's deals with death and how that reflects on his love of life. And I was actually really excited to see that movie. And it had Sam Rockwell in it as a guy who wants to be that big ball of life that Tony Stark is, but it never quite comes off because it's not really his nature, you know? And that was interesting. And then there was this other movie in it about the Avengers and about legacy and about the fathers and Crimson Lash or whatever. And that movie didn't hit any of the themes of what Iron Man is about. It hit the themes of what Avengers is about. Legacy is an Avengers theme, not an Iron Man theme. And it's sort of like that movie I was not interested in seeing. That's not what I paid $10 to see in the first place. And it's sort of like they're just constantly competing for attention. And at the end, I felt sort of like I didn't get to see either movie. The movie that I didn't expect to see but might have been surprised with, or the movie I actually wanted to see and then kind of just got usurped halfway through, you know?
Two things. $10. Which movie theater you're going to? Number two is, yeah, I think you're right. You know, it's just like the Avengers is the sense of like you're anointed if you become part of the team. You know, and this is, you know, whereas Tony Stark is a completely different thing. He's trying to prove himself. You know, after this, you know, past experience of, you know, being a death merchant at a certain level. You know, and he's trying, but it's just like we're not at the point so soon where the Avengers should be knocking at his door and there should be that much clutter. Like, we should be following his story.
No, but he's the rallying point, though.
No, I know. I agree. You know what I mean? But it's just at this point in the franchise. And I'm saying from the point of view of someone who has read the comics and knows the storyline, and I can follow and I can fill the holes. But if I were to bring somebody else there, and all these little ridiculous Easter eggs and all this, like, backstory, at this point, they don't know the universe enough. You know what I mean? Like, let them get to know the character, and especially such a likable character. lure them in for one more movie. You know, and I think they made the mistake of giving this one too much freight, is what it comes down to. You know, and it could have been good, but they tried to make it a little bit too serious. You know, and it should have been a little bit more frivolous. And I think the frivolousness of it would have ushered in more movies. You know what I mean? And I think this one, though, is going to be the beginning of The Estranging.
I agree with that.
I'm a fan of the light summer movie. So it's not that I'm coming down on it, that it needs to be serious or cerebral, but by and large, I think it failed in its own premise in a way, and it really only won itself by being something for fans of a different franchise, which is the comic books, you know. And as a movie on its own, I think it actually fell flat. And even as a sequel to its previous movie, it didn't live up to the standard, even if you were to expect that a sequel might not be as good as the first. It wasn't a horrible movie. All the actors had talent. The director has talent. By and large, though, disappointing. I would give it a B-.
Passable.
Yeah.
Okay. Eric.
I'm kind of
Chris
in the
said?
same boat, but I don't need to talk as much as Chris. It's a B-.
Exact same grade.
Yeah.
Yeah, no,
It's disappointing.
I'm totally with you guys. B-. I think it is exactly the sort of movie that I feel only hardcore fans will appreciate. If you know Iron Man, if you know the Avengers, if you're all into Marvel, you're gonna dig this. It's fun. The characters hint at exploration. As a comic book fan, you will probably be able to naturally fill in the blanks as you do it, and you'll have a good time with it because it doesn't really betray the universe. It doesn't do anything outrageously wrong with the franchise. You know, they can always bounce back from it. But honestly, it's sort of, I walked out and went like, 2 weeks from now, I'll have completely forgotten about this, and it just felt really hollow. So B-.
Dimitri, it's interesting you're describing the comic book fan. I totally unashamedly am, and again, I understand your points. I respect them absolutely. Maybe I can't dissociate myself from the universe, the original comic book stuff that I read. Sam Rockwell was an interesting surprise. Scarlett Johansson was an interesting surprise. Mickey Rourke wasn't anywhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be. Tony Stark was still engaging, and I'm big on the Avengers, so in a sense, a lot of the reasons why you guys give it negatives is part of the reason why I give it a plus. I don't know. I mean, if that means at the end of the day that we're going to get more Robert Downey Jr. in the Avengers movie, I'm not complaining.
I know I mentioned it before, but like the scene in the racetrack was hilarious when Happy and Pepper Potts actually drive into the track to rescue him, and the whole thing with her screaming and the door opening and closing when she's trying to throw the suitcase to Tony. Like, all of that was hilarious. It was great fun.
Because Mickey Rourke is so cool that you can basically drive a car into him. And it doesn't even hurt.
Well, I mean, come on, look at Mickey Rourke. He's had a couple cars run it down.